Okay, thank you so much for that introduction, Ms. Mara, and maraming salamat to UPHRDO for inviting me to be with you this afternoon. I hope that this can be a meaningful and wonderful time of engagement between us and a time of reflection and much learning and insight for all of us in this workshop for this afternoon. So I've entitled this workshop or this learning opportunity for us as nurturing ginhawa in the workplace. And for this workshop, we'll have different questions that we will look into today and that I hope can guide our learning and self-reflection and engagement with one another. So these are the questions that will guide us this afternoon. First, what is ginhawa and why is it important in the workplace? Second, what do we need to watch out for so that we can maintain a sense of well-being and appropriate levels of productivity in the workplace? Third, what skills and strategies can we use to provide care, concern, and validation to both ourselves and each other? Fourth, how do we create a supportive and nurturing work environment for ourselves and each other? And last but not least, how do we strive for a healthful or healthy balance or integration of work as well as other important life endeavors? Okay. So, how do we make the workshop experience meaningful for all of us? So, just some gentle reminders. The workshop will be meaningful if we participate actively by listening. And for those of you who want to share their reflections throughout the afternoon, please do so by sharing your comments. Please also make sure that we continue to respect viewpoints and boundaries, both our own as well as that of other people. Third, please try your best to maintain curiosity and openness to ideas, to insights and experiences, including perhaps those that may not be the same as ours. And last but not least, we invite self-reflection, but try to reflect without self-criticism. No? So this is not the time to judge ourselves. Rather, we will try our best to get to know ourselves better, not just as workers, as important as that identity is for all of us, but as people, as human beings. Okay? Sige, let's start by grounding ourselves. At for this, siguraduhin po natin komportable kayo sa inyong pagkakaupo. Alright, so siguraduhin komportable sa pagkakaupo at mag-uumpisa po tayo sa paghinga dahil lahat ay nagsisimula sa hinga o hininga. Ang paghinga pong gagawin natin ay mabagal at malalim dahil itong klase ng paghinga ang nakakapagpakalma at nakakaginhawa sa atin. If it will help you to close your eyes, please do so and you can simply listen to my voice as I facilitate this grounding exercise for all of us. So we will start breathing deeply and slowly. Okay. 4 counts, you slowly inhale through your nose. Siguraduhin pong tumataas ang tiyan habang nag-i-inhale. 4 counts kung kaya, i-hold ang breath. Another 4 counts, slowly exhale through the mouth. Siguraduhin pong bumababa ang tiyan habang nag-exhale. At 4 counts, mag-pause po or hold. So, subukan po natin. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. Exhale. So pagpatuloy lang po natin ang mabagal at malalim na paghinga. At ituon po ang pansin natin sa ating hinga. Kung meron mang mga isip o sensations na nararanasan, nararamdaman, okay lang po yun. So patuloy lang po ang breathing deeply and slowly as we begin to visualize parts of our bodies. So i-guide ko po sa inyo kung anong muscle group ang ite-tense at relax natin. Okay? By tense, ibig sabihin papatigasin at relax ay papalambutin. So umpisahan po natin. Tense the muscles in your face. And then relax the muscles in your face. Tense your face muscles. And then relax. Sunod po yung shoulder muscles. I-tense nyo po ito. And then relax. Tense nyo po ang shoulder muscles. Isama nyo na rin ang chest. Magkakasabay sila. And then relax. Pagsabayin po natin ang mga kamay at bisig. I-tense po natin ang muscles. And then relax. Tense ang muscles. Relax. Sama po natin ang ating buttocks or ang puwet. Tense po natin siya. And then relax. Tense your buttocks. Relax. Sunod po natin yung legs tsaka paa, feet. Tense po natin ang legs and feet. Pwede siyang itapak sa lupa. Tapos relax. Ulitin natin. Tense. And relax. Bigyan ko po kayo ngayon ng time. Ulitin po ninyo yung process na ito. Guide ko po kayo ulit. Face muscles, tense. Relax. Tense. Relax. Shoulders at chest, tense. Relax. Tense. Relax. Arms and hands po. Tense. Relax. Tense. Relax. Buttocks. Tense. Relax. Tense. Relax. Last but not least, legs and feet. Tense po natin. And relax. Tense. And relax. Try po natin i-tense yung muscles ng buong katawan. Tapos i-relax po natin ang buong katawan. Ulitin po, tense. Relax. Ilang po ako from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Kung okay lang po sa inyo, may gustong mag-comment, bigyan ko po kayo ng onting time. Kamusta naman po ang pakiramdam nyo matapos ang ating simpleng breathing and progressive muscle relaxation exercise. Sige po, kung gusto nyo po mag-comment, kamusta po ba? pong tawag sa exercise na ito ay progressive muscle relaxation. Actually po, it's a bit of a shortcut already just to demonstrate to you our capacity to control the muscles of our body through systematic tensing and relaxing of muscle groups. So this kind of exercise relieves some of the tension in our brains as well by releasing it from the body. And it also demonstrates to us that we have some control over our body, our mind, and our whole being. Okay? So, umpisa po tayo. Yung sabi natin, ang una nating question for this afternoon is what is ginhawa and bakit siya mahalaga sa ating workplaces. Sabi po ni Dr. Bolet Bautista, ang aking mentor at kaibigan at kasamahan po natin sa UPD PsychServe, ang ginhawa ay sense of wholeness, integration, and wellness sa buhay. At ang ginhawa ay maari nating maranasan at maari rin nating maaninag sa 4 na dimensyon. Nakakaranas ba tayo ng gana sa buhay? Magaan ba nating nadadala ang mga tungkulin at tahakin sa buhay? May sigla ba tayo sa pagsasagawa ng ating mga gawain? At nakakaranas ba tayo ng ligaya sa ating buhay? So if you look at ginhawa, it resonates with our experiences as Filipinos of being grounded in not just in ourselves, but in our context, in our environments, our communities, our families. Okay. We can also look at well-being, obviously from the standpoint of mental health, but we look at mental health also as a spectrum rather than an either-or scenario. So if we look at it as a spectrum, it means that we can move from one state to another within this mental health spectrum. So at one end of the spectrum is crisis mode. When we are in crisis, we feel very anxious, we have low mood. In the workplace, it could come out as absenteeism, no? Meaning poor attendance, papagod, poor sleep, and weight loss. Towards the other end, we can be excelling, and that means we feel cheerful, joyful, energetic. We enjoy high performance. We actually experience flow when we are working, meaning to say we are in the zone or in the moment because we are so engaged in what we do. And we have a sense that we are actualizing or realizing our potentials as not just as employees, but also as human beings. So that is the fullness of the spectrum that we are talking about. Now, why is it important to consider and integrate ginhawa and mental health in our workplaces? Well, simply put, workers who are well or who feel well, by that we mean workers who feel confident in who they are, their place in the world, their capacity to achieve desired outcomes, workers who feel joyful and energetic, who can bear their burdens effectively and lightly, are likelier to be more productive. They are also likelier to have good relationships at work that would inspire others to be similarly productive. So that is why mahalaga po na pagtuunan natin ito ng pansin. Okay. Workers who feel that their organizations care about them and their health are much likelier to have and display greater commitment to organizational goals. But also as a reminder for us, while worker well-being is associated with desired outcomes, it is not just a means to desired ends. It is also an end in itself. Mahalaga siya on its own. Okay. Now, the other question that we want to ask is, well, if mental health and well-being, if ginhawa are important in our workplaces, what do we actually need to watch out for so that we can maintain a healthy sense of well-being and consequently appropriate levels of productivity in the workplace? Okay, so just to show you, this is the stress curve, all right? And stress, even though it could feel unpleasant, is not always and completely bad for us. A moderate degree or amount of stress, which we call eustress, has been associated for the longest time. There's very strong research evidence that associates this kind of or level of stress with improved performance and focus, with greater sense of productivity and therefore well-being. So we actually want people to stay in a state of adaptive or good stress rather than to be in distress where they are feeling exhausted and anxious, or somebody who's not feeling any sort of stress will suffer from apathy and boredom naman. So we also don't want that for ourselves. Okay. So how do we know if stress is adaptive or healthy for us? Well, if the source of the stress is actually predictable so that we can actually predict our stress levels, have some way to control and manage our stress levels because the degree of stress is moderate, then actually that will help us be more productive and we become resilient in addressing problems and in navigating difficult situations. So stress is no longer healthy or helpful when the stressors are unpredictable. So you cannot control it, you cannot predict. When it is chronic and prolonged, when it is severe or extreme, and when it impairs the way we function. So this means we are no longer resilient. Instead, we are simply vulnerable. We are feeling exhausted and fatigued. Okay. Now, stress could also be our reaction to disrupted or violated boundaries. Boundaries are the rules or limits that we set across different areas in our lives. So in Tagalog, we call boundaries hangganan. So lahat po tayo ay may hangganan. There is no such thing as a limitless world or a limitless life. We don't recommend it. It is not good for our mental health and well-being to operate as if there are no limits. What is important is to continue getting to know our limits so that we can make informed and appropriate decisions about the instances in which we will want to push our limits or instances in which we will want to draw our boundaries. So our stress reaction tells us, hey, maybe there's something that I need to look into because maybe I am approaching my limits. Okay. So we also need to differentiate between adaptive and maladaptive coping as a response to stress. So how do I know if the way I'm coping is still adaptive? Well, does it help lighten the burden of the stress I'm experiencing? Nakakaginhawa ba siya sa akin? And also, are there long-term benefits to the way I am coping? In other words, I can imagine that it will be good for me to continue coping in this way. So that would be adaptive coping. Maladaptive coping actually exacerbates the stress we experience, and we have a sense na pansamantala lamang siya or short-term relief. But if we're going to be honest with ourselves, we have a sense, okay, this may not be sustainable. If I continue in this way, it may not actually be good for me. Then we know coping is no longer adaptive. Okay. Now, why do we want to cope adaptively? Because coping adaptively means our attitude to our work and life is one of acceptance rather than one of denial. Okay. When we accept our reality, it actually makes us more active in problem solving, more realistic in planning, and we have greater acceptance and compassion for ourselves. Therefore, we have better control and management of ourselves. Pag adaptive pong coping natin, we're always looking for ways to distract ourselves, essentially, so that we can deny the reality of whatever problems we're facing or that's giving us stress. Okay. All right. So that is stress and adaptation to stress. Okay. Now let's talk about something even more specific. Okay. If stress piles up and remains chronic, okay, so madami and then matagal paulit-ulit, right? And so in the context of work, we call that chronic occupational stress. Okay. If you experience that, the disadvantage to that is that it could result to a feeling of burnout. So this is called workplace burnout because it is specific to occupational stress that is persistently felt. So maybe some of you are wondering, am I experiencing this? Now, these are some indicators of workplace burnout. Are you feeling any or all of these specifically about your work? Not just in general, but about your work. Parati at patuloy akong napapagod, di lamang physically but also emotionally. Parati na lang negatibo ang pagtingin ko sa aking trabaho. Parati akong dumidistansya sa aking trabaho. Pakiramdam ko ay hindi na ako epektibo sa trabaho ko at hindi na nag-work ang pagpapahinga sa weekends. Yeah. So these are just some of the important indicators of workplace burnout. Why should we address workplace burnout in our workplaces? Well, because it is actually associated with undesired outcomes such as psychological distress, sleeplessness, and depression. It's associated with poor physical health such as heart disease, skeletal pain, and headaches. And of course, it is associated with absenteeism, yung absent ng absent, or yung converse niyan, presenteeism, hindi na nakakapag-set ng hangganan, present at present lahat kahit napapagod na. Job dissatisfaction tsaka low productivity are also associated outcomes with burnout. Okay. Now, what can we do to prevent or address chronic work-related stress and workplace burnout? So because we want to either prevent workplace burnout, or if it is happening to you already, we want to know how to begin to address it. So as employees, first of all, very basic, but sometimes it's not the easiest thing to do, is to recognize and accept feelings of being exhausted, overwhelmed, and uncertain. So if this is something that you're feeling, the first step is to accept that that is what's going on. Right? Take a step back and identify what you can and cannot control about your work situation. Chances are there are things that we cannot control about work. So work towards accepting those things and instead focus your energy on what you can actually control about your work situation. Okay. Another thing we can do is to pay attention to ourselves and other equally important areas of our lives. And last but not least, cultivate wholesome, life-affirming relationships, both in your workplace as well as outside of work. Okay. Now, some of us may be leaders in our workplaces. If so, what can we do to address workplace burnout? Well, it would help to first find out using systematic methods the extent to which workplace burnout is happening in your unit, and also find out what could be causing the workplace burnout. So once you know what's going on, the invitation is to take a long, hard look at your organizational practices and see which can be changed. So how heavy is the workload? Are workers' boundaries being respected? Do workers feel like they are being listened to and validated in the organization? Okay. Now, some of these questions are actually not easy to answer. So it takes commitment to actually even begin asking these questions of ourselves. Another thing we can do as leaders is to work collaboratively and respectfully with our direct reports so that they feel genuinely listened to, and in turn will be more motivated to do their part in addressing workplace burnout, because this is a problem that has to be shared by everybody in the organization. We work together to combat workplace burnout. And remember that even if you are a leader, you are also a worker and an employee. So the recommendations in the previous slide also apply to you. Okay, now let's look into, maybe some of you know the term self-sabotaging. No? What is it and why do we do it? Okay, according to Jerry Harvey, we have twin tendencies to lift ourselves up, but also bring ourselves down. So self-sabotaging results from and reflects that internal conflict between the need to belong, okay, and the need to be set apart, to be unique. Okay, now you might be wondering, am I self-sabotaging? Here are some indicators. Do you experience any or all of these at work? Okay, so lahat gagawin ko para lang magustuhan ako ng mga katrabaho ko. Okay, hindi ko kayang sumalungat sa iniisip ng grupo sa takot na hindi nila ako tatanggapin. Pakiramdam ko, madalas na-obsess ako sa pakikipagkumpetensya sa opisina. At parati kong sinisigurong hindi ako malalamangan sa trabaho o kaya'y parati akong kikilalanin sa gawain ko. Okay? Okay. So we can see that self-sabotaging is really about competing too much, making sure hindi ka nadedehado, tapos hindi mo nire-risk, no? Parati kang nakaprotekta sa sarili, so nakokompromiso yung pakikipagtungo at pakipagtrabaho mo sa iyong mga katrabaho. No? So how do we not self-sabotage? Well, first, we need to keep cultivating self-awareness. Of course, we'll look into self-awareness even more deeply later, but just to note that it's very important to be self-aware in our lives certainly, but specifically also at work. So kilalanin po natin ang pansariling motibasyon at emosyonal na pangailangan kasi lumalabas ang mga ito sa kilos at salita natin, mga pasya natin sa trabaho. And we also want to be mindful of our impact on other people. Okay? Maging tapat at authentic sa pakikitungo sa mga katrabaho, no matter their status in the organization. So just a reminder to all of us, respect does not equate to subservience. So higher ups are not necessarily morally superior to us. Conversely, our direct reports are not inferior to us. We are all equal in the eyes of Batman. Okay. Now, get to know and understand your personal relationship with your organization's culture. Of course, it could be a matter of uh, fit between you and your organizational culture. So how much of a discrepancy is there that could be driving self-sabotaging behaviors because you just keep trying to fit in, but the discrepancy between your beliefs and values and that of your organization could simply be too great. Okay. All right. So that's for our first two questions. So we talked about stress, workplace burnout, and self-sabotaging because these are the things that we need to watch out for so that we can continue to maintain a sense of ginhawa as well as adequate productivity and performance in our workplaces. Okay, let me just check in with you and your comments, and then we will get to our subsequent questions in our workshop for this afternoon.